Hello, my name is Mr. Chipman. This is 2.10, Origins of Cell Compartmentalization, Unit 2 Cells, AP Biology, where I teach AP Biology at Murray High School in Murray, Kentucky. Fantastic place. You should visit Murray. It's kind of a nice place. Or you probably already live here because you're watching this video during my class. So we've talked about cell compartmentalization. Where does it come from? Where did it begin? Here's a nice little comic that takes you through it. You don't even need to watch the rest of the video. You can just look at this comic and see that everything ends happily. Or if you want to watch the video, let's do that. So the theory as to how cellular compartmentalization arose is this idea called the endosymbiotic theory. Let's look at the word endosymbiotic. Endo, inside, sim, together, bio, life, living inside together. Right? This is an explanation as to how prokaryotes evolved into eukaryotes. We've talked about the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes have no nucleus, they have no membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotes do. How did that arise? How did that come about? Well, we're going to look at it. So the general idea is that, so you're going to see all of this kind of language here, right? You're going to see all this kind of language. Proto-eukaryote. Proto means first eukaryotes, right? It's going to engulf some other cell, right? And so engulf that cell, meaning that it takes it in endosymbiosis or endocytosis, sorry. Rather than ingesting it, instead it uses that cell's trickery. Let's take a more technical term. So basically, rather than digesting this aerobic bacteria, they live together, right? And so what is the aerobic bacteria doing? By definition, the aerobic bacteria is doing aerobic things, using oxygen in order to create energy, in order to make ATP, essentially, right? What a mitochondria does, break down glucose in the presence of oxygen to make ATP. So imagine this cell, rather than ingesting this thing, forming a symbiotic relationship with it, and thus the mitochondria or the aerobic bacteria gets the benefit of the protection from the outside world, and this cell gets the benefit of now a new form of ATP being made. That's the idea. Well, imagine that same business, and that's the idea of the mitochondria. Imagine that same cell then ingesting a photosynthetic bacteria. It's able to use light energy in order to create glucose. This is how you have, in that same process of endosymbiosis occurring, then you have plant cells that are able to not only do photosynthesis but also aerobic respiration. This is an important point. Plant cells have mitochondria. Don't get that backwards. They do have mitochondria. I think I've already said that, but I just needed to say that again. What are some supporting evidences of this idea? There's several. Both chloroplasts and mitochondria have double membranes, suggesting that at some point endocytosis occurred, right? That they have not only the membrane that they came with, but the membrane that engulfed them, and so now they have two membranes. They have their own DNA. It's circular DNA, similar to bacteria DNA. They have ribosomes, which would be used to make proteins. All living things have ribosomes, and they have their own ribosomes, but they're not living things. And they replicate independently by the process of binary fission. So mitochondria and chloroplasts replicate themselves rather than depending on cellular machinery in order to do that. This is supporting evidence of that. So how does compartmentalization happen in prokaryotic cells then? This is important. It doesn't. They don't have membrane-bound organelles. However, they still do have regions in the cytoplasm, right? There's specialized regions in the cytoplasm. Typically, you'll see the word nucleoid associated with the region that the DNA is in. And so it's not true compartmentalization, but there are places in the prokaryotic cell that things tend to happen and other things don't happen, right? And so that is kind of the way that is occurring. You see that with photosynthetic bacteria. They don't have chloroplasts, but photosynthesis is still happening. Aerobic bacteria, they don't have mitochondria. The aerobic respiration is still happening. It's just happening on the membrane of that bacteria. Some of them need nitrogen fixation. Again, it's happening in a certain region of the cell as opposed to a specialized area or specialized organelle, as opposed to eukaryotic compartmentalization, which uses organelles, right? There are organelles using internal membranes, those membranes being composed of phospholipids like the external membrane. You have things like the endomembrane system, you have lysosomes, you have mitochondria, chloroplasts, all the things we've talked about. Just to make sure too, when we're talking about these are important bio words. Eukaryotic cells, we're talking about cells that have a nucleus, that have membrane-bound organelles. These are plant cells, fungi, animals, protists, prokaryotic cells. Anytime you see the word prokaryotic, it's typically going to be referring to bacteria. Let's look at a practice problem. In the 1960s, so this is a great example of, in this class, we don't really memorize dates or things like that. It's important, not to say that these dates aren't a good thing, but a lot of times you'll see a question like this where you will get a bit of history and a date in a question, right? And here's a great example. In the 1960s, biologist Lingenberg proposed a radical idea. This doesn't sound like an AP question. Mitochondria and chloroplasts were once free-living prokaryotes that became permanent residents inside larger cells. Her hypothesis, now known as the endosymbiotic theory, was initially rejected by many scientists. So again, I don't even need to define endosymbiotic theory here, right? And so not only am I given some dates and some fun facts and radical ideas, but I am given the definition of the endosymbiotic theory, which the following observations later became key evidence supporting her theory. So I do need to now know the evidence about that. And I know that mitochondria have double membranes, their own ribosomes, DNA. They reproduce independently. I know all these things, and so I can now go find those in ABCD. Are present in all eukaryotic cells. That is not necessarily evidence. Both organelles contribute to maintaining homeostasis. Sure, they do, but that's not evidence. Prokaryotic cells can survive inside eukaryotic cells without. I don't know that that's evidence, right? And mitochondria and chloroplasts containing circular DNA replicate independently. That's evidence. D is the correct answer. I hope this was helpful. That's 2.10. That is all of Unit 2, as a matter of fact. I'll be hosting a review session for my class for Unit 2. That'll probably be available later. If you have questions, though, please ask them down below in the comments, and we'll be looking forward to Unit 3 very shortly.